As I've had more time to digest the release date and latest news for Fortune's Weave, I've been thinking a lot about what my impressions of this game will be. What aspects will I be the most excited about when it comes to exploring the world of Dagda? And what aspects of this game am I dreading as a Fire Emblem fan? I, for one, always try to remain optimistic about new entries in Fire Emblem, but as I've played about just about every entry in this series, I have my personal preferences when it comes to my enjoyment of this franchise. So with that, I want to talk about my personal hopes and worries for Fortune's Weave as a Fire Emblem game. With this game around the corner within 2 months, be sure to hit that like and subscribe button if you enjoy Fire Emblem content. Now, with that in mind, here are my hopes and worries for Fortune's Weave. Let's get started. Starting off with what will be my first hope of the game, let's talk about how they will expand upon the mechanics borrowed from Engage. Fire Emblem Engage is a bit of a divisive game among fans, most notably for its presentation, though I've personally grown to appreciate the gameplay loop that it provides. This especially shines in the form of the Emblem Rings. The Emblem Rings offered a great variety of customizability, unique abilities, and skill combinations to make for satisfying army compositions. The Emblem Rings functioned off of an Engage meter, where, when charged, would allow a character to enter an engage mode. They would then receive special buffs, weapons, and a unique action tied to the ring. Fortune's Weave seems to have borrowed this mechanic as well in the form of the Blaze Art meter. This meter has been shown on several characters, such as Dietrich, Leda, Kai, Theodora, and Ursula, my beloved. From these characters, it seems like the game is catering towards the main cast and likely crest bearers to be the only ones capable of engaging with these mechanics. Engaging. What's interesting to note about these meters is that they seem to come with drawbacks for using them. Each Blaze Art ability we have seen has an HP cost associated with them, kinda like the combat arts from Shadows of Valentia. And as we see here from Dietrich activating his Misty Step ability, he also fills up the meter by 1 tick upon using it. And other characters, like Leda, are seen to have fully charged meters, showcasing that she can activate her Song of Beasts only by meeting a certain meter threshold. This meter can lead to entertaining risk and reward style gameplay. The game can force the player to manage their Blaze Art meters to save up for special attacks, as opposed to, say, having the Engage meter ready at the start of every map to instantly use their special attacks, like an Engage. On the topic of managing meters, we see here that Leda has an action to manage her gauge while she's at full. It could be that having a fully charged meter could have significant benefits and disadvantages. Perhaps the arts become more potent, or wild stat variations can come into play to make units very volatile, but pull off strategic maneuvers in niche situations. Fire Emblem has always been known to take previously used mechanics from prior games to be expanded upon into their following entry. The pair-up system from the 3DS games and the Tellius base are prime examples that come to me for that. With this Blaze Art system borrowing the Engage meters and Shadows of Valentia's combat art drawbacks, I'm rather excited to see how they expand upon a system I enjoyed from the previous entry. Alrighty, now let's move on to my second hope, and that is that this game will set the standard for presentation of 3D Fire Emblem. From what we have seen of the gameplay, cutscenes, and portraits, I am hopeful that this will be setting the standard for what the future of Fire Emblem holds. I've had a bit of a mixed relationship with the presentation of 3D Fire Emblem. While I can certainly enjoy the combat transitions from the map to the battles of Fire Emblem Fates, the portraits of Three Houses, and the battle animations of Fire Emblem Engage, these games haven't landed for me consistently in every category. Fortune's Weave, however, is setting up to be a prime presentation style for Fire Emblem. Just watching the way the camera pans around Sirocco as he crits an Armor Knight gives this sense of hype and honestly really good cinematography. There's also the way Kai charges up his Hadouken attack. You almost feel the genuine impact of the blast as he charges and then unleashes it upon an entire squad of enemies. And there's also the way that Dietrich just fluidly finishes off his foes with his combat arts. It's just incredibly edgy and seamless at the same time. Even from just watching the cutscenes, this game is getting a massive upgrade from Three Houses alone. You can really tell that Intelligent Systems is putting a lot of effort into this game, and they seem very confident and proud of what they have created. It looks like they're taking the best of every single game's presentation style that came before them and combining it into one single package. If that wasn't enough, small touches like the 2D portraits of characters being animated? That alone just enhances the conversations, and a nice little quality upgrade from the 2D portrait edits we're used to seeing in every other game. Regardless if the story or gameplay don't land as hard, the overall art style has me hooked and hopeful that Intelligent Systems continues this standard for every other 3D game that they make. Alrighty, let's move on to my final hope for Fortune's Weave. This one is a bit of a simple one, and it's a mechanic that I hope that they bring back to the world of Three Houses, and that would be, please implement the weapon triangle. The weapon triangle is such a core feature of Fire Emblem's identity as an SRPG. While it can boil down to something simple as Pokemon typing effectiveness, it gives weapons purpose to stand out on the battlefield. It would also give a bit of risk and reward factor of playing into the RNG elements of the games, creating hype moments of barely scraping by hordes of enemies despite having triangle disadvantage. In Three Houses, however, the weapon triangle is noticeably absent. On top of that, every character can use just about any weapon with the right training and investment. To me, separating weapons from classes along with the weapon triangle helps distinguish unit identity, creating satisfying units that you know you can rely on rather than mad scientist concoctions of builds. While we have not seen any indication that the weapon triangle interacts in any way in Fortune's Weave, I want to hold out hope that this mechanic isn't entirely thrown out. While I do feel happy seeing usual sights of Fire Emblem mechanics like weapon durability and the unit archetypes like seeing the Christmas calves, I fear that the lack of a weapon triangle will hinder the identity of weapons on the battlefield. If a mechanic has been present in just about a good amount of these games, then why bother removing it, I say. Alrighty, now it's time to move on to my 3 worries of Fortune's Weave, the hit sequel to 3 Hopes. Let's just rip off the band-aid and start with number 1. The game's grinding features. In the second trailer, we get a glimpse of the gameplay loop between main chapters of the game. There is a notable indicator for a turn limit of actions you could do until the main mission occurs, much like Three Houses' monthly missions. Though, unlike Three Houses, this game prominently shows its overworld map with a lot of tiles and interactable locations. Every single tile seems to have unique icons, like fishes, carts, and some star icons that could indicate Paralog missions or Valentia-style dungeons. Now, world maps have been a feature before in Fire Emblem. Games like Fire Emblem Gaiden, Shadows of Valentia, Sacred Stones, and Awakening allow the player to run around the world map and interact with tiles to, say, shop for items and grind for XP in enemy encounters. Now, the latter part is where my worry comes in. If this game leans into encouraging the player to explore these tiles and gain XP to their heart's content, what does that mean for the level scaling for the main missions? If I say grind too much, my units will absolutely curb stomp the enemy, making the core SRPG elements an overall snooze fest. Or say maybe I try to limit myself and not grind as much, and I could possibly hit a wall, getting outscaled by enemies because I didn't grind enough. This can also force players on the higher difficulties to hyper-optimize the world map grinding, which could severely bog down the gameplay loop of Fortune's Weave. I'm really hoping to be wrong about this world map feature and the overall scaling of the game's difficulty, but I enjoy Fire Emblem most when you play chapter by chapter, when the scaling is designed around having limited XP between each main mission of the game. And at the end of the day, this is simply just a worry at the end of the day, and I could just be completely wrong and off about this entire mechanic, and maybe it'll be something that I ultimately enjoy. But with that in mind, let's move on to my second worry for Fortune's Weave, and that is the difference in content quality between each story route. If there's one thing I dislike about Three Houses, it's the content quality disparity between routes of the game. The Blue Lions, in my eyes, receive the most developer love in every single aspect, whether it's the cast, the high-quality cutscenes, story moments, and overall presentation that makes it arguably the most impactful route out of all of them. From the perspective of a first playthrough, I was expecting to receive the same level of quality between each route of Three Houses after I beat Blue Lions. However, I sadly didn't feel that way after going through White Clouds over and over again to experience a brand new route. A big example of this is the big reveal of Edelgard being the Flame Emperor. When I first saw this reveal through the eyes of Dimitri, seeing his fall from grace through one of the most memorable cutscenes of the game, between the reveal of Edelgard being the villain and Dimitri lowering his mask as a broken character, this had me hooked for the rest of this story arc. Now, let's compare this moment to, say, the Black Eagles, where Edelgard just runs on screen with a bunch of jobbers and Hubert without the Flame Emperor armor and just declares, "Oh hey guys, I'm the Flame Emperor by the way." Or in Golden Deer, where Edelgard just loses her helmet without even a map animation after you defeat the Flame Emperor, with Claude just dropping a "Whoa, guys, I didn't see that coming" line to boot. These two just don't really have the same impact as the Blue Lions route. First impressions are everything for a game to hook its players, and if some routes of Fortune's Weave are more impactful than others, then I worry about the long-term enjoyability of the game. While I have said that the presentation of this game has certainly been upgraded, I fear that with the design philosophy of route splits that some stories will have more developer favoritism than others. If it's been proven before in Three Houses, it's likely that they could do it again in Fortune's Weave. Now, lastly, let's talk about what will be my last worry for Fortune's Weave, and that is, with this game's release, Fire Emblem will shift to more of a social sim with less SRPG elements. It's no secret that Three Houses is by far the biggest shift in direction compared to the average Fire Emblem game. Sure, you still have your main cast, dedicated avatar and lord, and SRPG gameplay, but it's undeniable that other features make it feel less like a typical Fire Emblem game. Three Houses' gameplay loop had a massive dedication to the monastery, tasking the player with interacting with all manner of social simulator minigames to interact with your party. These minigames would affect the overall trajectory of the game. Grinding those were essentially required to gain supports, weapon ranks, promotions, stat boosters, and so on. Despite this departure from the average Fire Emblem loop, it's undeniable that this game had massive success in appealing to the masses. Compared to the Fire Emblem games considered to be more traditional, the Tellius games and DS games ultimately did put the franchise in danger of being axed. At the end of the day, companies have to do what works best for their consumers, and going back to the world of Three Houses is really a no-brainer to recapture that game's success. My worry for this is that if Fortune's Weave adds on more of these social sim elements over the SRPG elements Fire Emblem is known for, this franchise as we know it could drastically change. Now, sure, niche genres in gaming will always have a place amongst gamers. I mean, just look at the massive success of Baldur's Gate 3. People thought that turn-based RPGs were long dead, and that game proved them wrong, becoming a massive pillar in modern gaming standards. But unfortunately, Nintendo isn't Larian Studios, and I fear that Fire Emblem as we know it will take a much larger direction than its roots. But hey, at the end of the day, these are simply my thoughts, and I'm all for just for generating discourse around this franchise that means so much to me since I was a little kid. So yeah, those are my hopes and fears for Fortune's Weave. Now, I would like to hear from all of you. What are your personal hopes for Fortune's Weave? Do you agree with my points, or do you disagree? Let me know in the comments down below, and be sure to like and subscribe for more Fire Emblem content. My name is Davis G. I'll see you all next time. Take care.